Happy Monday, my friends. Monday is for the mentors. Welcome to B2B Mentors. So grateful to have you here listening in, whether you're listening in on your favorite podcast app, which, by the way, we are on every single podcast app available. Please go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review so others can find the show too. And if you're watching this live, please make sure you share this video. I guarantee you there's somebody else in your network who will get immense value out of this because I'm bringing you badass guests, guys. All right. Free information. All it costs you is your time to consume and then take action on it after the fact. Today, I have my friend David Reid, who is a global speaker on innovation, change leadership, as well as being an advocate on addressing modern slavery. David serves on the board of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the National Ocean Industries Association, and redeemed a trauma-informed recovery program for sex trafficking survivors. David has done so much more. So with that, my friends, I'm going to bring the man, the myth, the legend up here to tell you himself. David Reid, happy Monday, my friend. What's going on?
I'm doing good. How are you, Connor?
I didn't even know my voice could get that high. That was,
what's happening?
That was a nice little peak. I'm just so excited, just elated.
That's a lot of happy.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I appreciate you joining. I read your bio at a high level, but you've done so much more and had so much more success than what we shared there. Little humble. So I'm going to give you permission, please brag about yourself a little bit. Give a little bit more context as to what led you to where you're at in your life and career today.
Well, bragging isn't natural when you're British. It's started in Scotland. So we're generally like to what we call slag ourselves off. So we like to say negative things about ourselves. But I started in architectural work and married a Californian. So I was back and forth between Scotland and California. And then someone inside of oil and gas offered me a job. And I ended up fitting into a workshop that was not natural for me, but in a repair workshop and slowly started inventing things and working on the business side. And got recognized pretty early, got moved to California, worked with gigantic robots for years and in the design of drilling rigs. And kind of became an automation guy. And all along I was a marketer, but in a business world that didn't love marketing that much because it was such a small, direct business-to-business environment. But over time, we kept buying companies. We buy about a company a month. And
wow.
Doing that for years. We're probably over 250 companies that we bought and integrated. And so I kind of geek on things. And so I get into all of the technologies as we buy them. I kind of obsess on them. And I ended up at the end of all of that becoming the chief marketing officer and chief technology officer because of those two problems that I like to market and I geek out on technology. So kind of eventually and I'm weird compared to everybody else. So they decided I probably should fit in that, what they call an artist role. So they work with the artists, the people who invent and the people who create. So,
well, how the heck do you manage playing both roles within your organization?
It's funny. I get asked that a lot because I guess in most organizations, those have tensions within them, those two roles.
100%.
To me, they are the same thing. So
it's like trying to put your lawyer and your sales team together on the same,
Well, I ran product line for a while, and I think when you think of the whole business, it becomes easy. When you start to think, of complete businesses, it doesn't become a tension. You can manage both. But for me, a lot of what I've done was long-term strategy, and so I'm having to carry things through the company before anyone thinks they should live. And they all want to kill it, because it's painful. New stuff is painful. And so that even the art of early marketing, of hinting before you're ready, but not launching, all of that stuff ended up being really important for positioning the company. And it probably, I think before we had a CTO, I was the CMO. And that wasn't attention, but I was meddling in her business a lot more and everyone's business a lot because I wanted to make sure that we were positioning ourselves for people to know who we were and for that to mean something financially. So both of those things work quite well for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So you're like me. You like to kind of geek out about new innovation, stuff that's going on, and it just even in our initial conversation, you have natural curiosity about yourself. What are you geeked out about right now in your particular world?
We're playing in the renewable space a lot, which is a lot of fun. So there's a lot of invention in that space that's needed. Maybe about 5. Usually, my cycles are 10 years up. You're looking about 10 years out, and around.
When you say cycles, what do you mean by that? So.
Well, every business has cycles, right? So when you understand the life cycle of anything, you've got your kind of early adoption world, your growth world, and then eventually your death world of any product or any service or whatever it is. And and when you're in the middle of those, there's different behaviors that you have to kind of latch onto. But for me, it's if I'm looking at a decade, what's coming matters, because what we do today is going to be not useful in 10 years time. So I have to get people who think it's going to go on forever, which everyone believes, to invest and to do things, getting ready for when things are harder. And when things are harder, I have to do things to get ready for when things are great. And so those are the cycles that are pretty normal, but most people think there's something magical about you when you can project that that's what's coming next, when it's really simple. So it's pretty much going to get better or worse. And those are your options.
It's called history, right? And also everything.
It's life. It's the cycle of life. It's all those movies,
Yeah. Are you so in your what you're talking to specifically to is oil and gas, especially? Would you consider yourself in a volatile struggle right now, or difficult times right now?
We're in a historic worst ever. So
yeah.
So, I came in and I wasn't really interested in oil and gas, but when I got into it, the technology was ridiculous. The things they were working on were so interesting and exciting. But I still had this kind of, one day we need to do better than this. But at the same time, you get to watch the benefit of it. But because, of course, it's changed the world. What we've been able to do with low-cost energy has been amazing. But the need to improve our energy source continues. So that's kind of been a fun thing. We were working on it when no one thought we'd ever need to work on it. And so that's fun for me to do things that people don't think are relevant, and then within 5 years think you're a genius. That's kind of the fun part, So here we are, where we've lined up a lot of things. We're in probably the worst downturn in history, and suddenly everyone's like, okay, well, tell me again about that renewable stuff. Can we make money at that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worked the same in oil and gas, is that they have their cycles, but we have lots of businesses because we acquire lots of people, and so you end up, we're in industrial, we're in all sorts of other things. But the hard part was oil and gas was good money.
Yeah.
And so as a business, it was pretty healthy. But the things we've learned inside of oil and gas, we're able to take everywhere. So there's a lot of industries that we're in, and we're able to help. But it's all fun. It's a lot of fun. I think dealing with that variant. We're a pretty large company, although we've shrunk to half the size that we were. And so now we're looking at growing out of that again. So
in this last year
since 14, probably we've been going down. And this last year was extremely hard. But because we certainly we banked cash, which was on purpose. We always made sure we had cash to live through a hard winter. But we didn't expect winter to last 6 years, So that's been hard, but that it causes discipline. I actually like downturns. I like hard times. I think they're really good for focusing on change, and that's my favorite thing is causing change.
Totally agree with that. Some of the best innovations ever, even from a personal standpoint, when things get really tight, you find yourself getting more creative.
Right.
It's like you almost need that downturn, that pressure, that dark days.
We had a historic high. We were over 10 years of things being good, which we'd never known because it's such a normally volatile subject.
100%.
And so we were used to these regular cycles, and it works like an engine. So I was quite liking that from my career standpoint, because you could really deal with that kind of momentum of down, up, and they were pretty extreme. One long up, and I sat in the middle of it going, "Oh my goodness, this is like that moment on the funfair ride, where you're like, oh no, it's coming," and everyone's like, "Isn't this fun?" You're like, "No, no, no, we're climbing up now, but the drop's going to be bad," and it was bad, So it was a pretty heavy and hard drop.
Did you bring that strategy into play, which I think is a genius approach, especially being in such a volatile market that you're in, oil and gas, that, hey, while things are good, let's go acquire companies that can be alternative sources of income and alternative profit centers. What was kind of the thought process behind that?
There was always that. I've had a process that I use where I bring really smart people in a room. I call it Fight Club. Not my first idea, but Fight Club, like the movie.
I love it.
Because no one can talk about it, right? So people who've been in Fight Clubs never have talked about it. So in our company, it's not like a cultural thing where everyone goes, "Oh yeah, Fight Club." No one knows it. Doesn't exist. But I get people in a room who are really strategically strong or might be strategically strong, and we brainstorm stuff. And I tell them, "You're in a Fight Club, which means this didn't happen, and so you can't talk about it." And so they leave the room, and some of them think there was only ever one because they weren't very good. And then other people come back, and learn. But what you do is the great strategic minds aren't usually all your top leadership. Don't tell them that. But usually they're up and coming. They're more hungry. Their brain is much more agile, and they're very keen to work out where we should go. And then I have the hard challenge of seeding that. And so most of this was projected around 14, just before we started going down. And we'd highlighted a few things. One included that in the long term we have to do more than oil and gas. I'd suggested to my boss we segment the company that way, but he wasn't ready for that. But here we are, over we're getting up to 10 years now. In about a 10-year time we'll be a completely different company, and that's okay. But you have to have patience in these things. But we definitely projected it. There was probably two phases. The first was digitization that is saving our butt right now.
Vegetization, is that what you said?
Digitization.
Oh, digitization.
Great, but we're not vegetizing.
I'm like, that's an odd term. What is it?
Yeah, vegetization.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's a thing and talk about it for the next hour.
You wrote the business book on it, right?
This is where it started, this podcast, vegetization. Let's talk about it.
Yep. How do you plant the seeds to blah, blah, blah? I don't know. We can come up with something. We'll write.
Get the vegetables to eat the cows. That's our goal.
Someday, I mean, some of these plants, man, they might be taking down, farmers in the field. You got to be careful.
There's some great cartoons.
Is that thing a corn growing teeth on it? What the hell is that?
There you go. There's your cow. Sorry about that. Get more cows to feed the vegetables.
Yeah.
No, digitization. It's a trend. I mean, I've been in the automation and digital space for a long time.
Yeah.
But what we started to do was build systems more than anything. One of the efficiencies I learned about in college, I was studying London and why it was built by American companies, so that all the new construction projects were American. And there was something cultural in the States that allowed the barriers between groups to break down. That was really interesting to me, that people could integrate and focus on the goal of the company. Plus, Americans are a lot more focused on their company, whereas in Europe, you're skeptical of your company. So I did this kind of cultural study, and I learned that there's a lot of waste in humanity trying to organize and structure things. Where if you can get everyone to just work more like a family than a corporation, you can do better things. And so we started buying companies with that purpose in mind, and we took these giant mega projects and started delivering them, on time, on budget, which was unheard of, and these massive construction jobs. So that was really what I'd studied in college, and we just brought it to bear. And my logic for that was all around 2000, based on after Y2K, when everyone's computer systems were potentially going to collapse. It got me into the whole world is going digital.
Yeah.
Now in the 80s, I started in Silicon Valley. So a lot of my friends were in that space. So they're talking things I've never heard before, but they were saying cloud and that back in 2000. And like, no one knows or cares what you're talking about. But I did get this connectedness. So we started to standardize systems to take inefficiency out of large projects. Then we started digitizing it. And so I had to, in our big boom, start building software capabilities that would be much easier to implement, lower cost and fast. And we did that actually outside the company during the boom times. And it slowly brought it in, and now it's our standard product that keeps a lot of the businesses going. And we're kind of building in that space. So as a software company, we're growing. And then my next wave was on the renewable side. So that's just hitting the news now, and people are shocked by how real our business is. Mostly because we didn't tell people. So most of the world talks about renewable stuff when it's just
or the second they acquire a new company, and
or when they sit in a room and go, hey, you know what we could do? We could I don't know, turn corn into energy. Okay, let's make a press release. After just saying we could do this. That's what most people are doing, is they're making these big statements without having done anything. And so we work really hard on doing stuff. And so we're actually a legit business that are in the space. So when we started talking, everyone's like, oh, okay, what's your idea? And you're like, no, it's not an idea. We've got millions of dollars over here doing this stuff. And they go, oh, you're the real thing. And so it's been great for investors, because they're starting to realize we're not just talking, we're actually doing this. And so that's part of that long-term strategy of,
well, it's like your job title right now is CTO and CMO in oil and gas company that's in renewables. It's very, very contradictory.
Probably one of the biggest, we just announced, we don't generally announce if it's not a purchase order. But our partner announced, because they wanted to use us as a reference in Europe, that we're going to be powering with 200 floating wind turbines, platforms that are oil and gas, but also start feeding into the grid in the UK. 200 of those. That's almost our whole fleet that we built, in semi-submersibles for drilling.
Yeah.
So this is a huge deal, but everyone's kind of like, what? Well, of course, you did it on oil and gas. So offshore energy is really easy for us. We know it well. We understand it. So we're in biogas. We're looking, geothermal's natural for us. But we're trying to do some breakthroughs there. So we've been, about 5 years ago, we got a team of different thinkers, and we parked them in what looks like an unfinished office. It's very roughed out. There's not proper walls on it. And they gave them some 3D printers and some machine tools and some computers, and they've put together ideas. So we said, just break the cost in half. If you can cut the cost in half of any renewable, go after it. And they started doing it. They kept coming up with ideas. And so we have some breakthroughs coming that we have not told the world about. But behind that, we said we better get credible in this space. So we started buying and developing our businesses into the renewable space. So
yeah, operating like a true startup inside of larger entity.
Yeah. Well, and we went to Singularity University to do a course they had called IPP.
Oh, cool.
But all of our execs had to go to that. We made all of our leadership go, mostly because they needed to learn the world is changing, digital is big, and renewables are coming. And so you got to sit in with all the industries of the world. You didn't have anybody from your industry, and then you just hear what the world is doing and where it's going. And that really, really helped us to move faster and get support out of leadership who were kind of resistant. They're all like, this is what we do. We don't do these other things.
Is Singularity University, is that not Steve? Steve.
Yeah. It's a Google organization.
Oh, that's Google's? Okay.
I believe so. I never asked.
I thought that was Peter Diamandis. I thought he was maybe a part of that.
Yeah. No.
So I definitely want to touch on the renewable side, but what's really interesting timing wise about this conversation, I didn't think it would lead into this, but I just started reading the book Exit Rich by Sharon Lechter, part of Rich Dad Poor Dad. Anyways, really fascinating, talks about all building your business for sale, which I think is like how a lot of people nowadays see their businesses. I'm building this innovative tech because I'm going to exit it eventually. That's the ultimate plan. I'm going to sell it off.
We hope you all are, because we're going to buy it.
Yeah, that's what so we want to sell it off to a company like David. So this would be really insightful for those that are listening. What are you looking for typically? How do you look at sourcing deals like this? What do you really take a look at before you acquire? Break that into detail a bit more.
So we have a weird company. So I have to explain the company a bit. We don't work like a corporation at all. We work more like a family. We're more it's more natural, the things we do. Corporate behavior is kind of like you don't see any corporate babies. It's not a natural human tendency. So you have to find natural human tendencies. And so our acquisition group is tiny. It's like maybe 3 people.
Wow.
So they don't look for deals, although lots of people bring them to them. But generally, we don't buy what people bring to us. Our 35,000 people look for deals. So our people in the business will be the ones who bring up ideas. And so they'll say, oh, we've seen this person, because they're really in the business and they understand their competition and they understand what's out there. So they usually do the sourcing and feed it up into that team. And that's usually where most of our ideas come from. And what happens is we did a study maybe 6 years ago. We've never done any corporate, this is who we are as a corporation, repeat these things every day, and light a candle or whatever people do in corporations. But they kind of obsess on their culture and they try and force culture from the top.
Yep.
We did a study and we found we had the same culture. Everyone we bought has the same culture. It's a small company culture. We really like purposeful innovation. We don't like innovation for its own sake. We act like a family. Everyone says that whether we've told them that or not. They say the words family when they talk about the company. And service is high in our what we do things for. We care about each other. We care about our community. We care about how we treat each other. And so those 3 attributes were found across the whole company. And no one was ever told about the company doing the study. It was like, we've never seen this. They said to me, we were in Singapore and I met the guy running this plant and I told him about you and he didn't know you. That was good. And he goes, oh, that's not good. They should know you. I said, why? Well, why would they need to know me? Well, it seems like they're running their own business. Yeah, that's exactly. So, I mean, what we learned from IPP was that all these big corporations were struggling, and they'd say, okay, well, just go create a company outside if you want to do a startup, and then bring them back in. Well, when they bring them back in, they kill them. Big corporations kill small companies, and so when you buy them,
squash them with bureaucracy and
they culturally believe they're right, and they're wrong, right? So I mean, we bring people in, and we're like, don't do what we say, do what you think is right. And if we're doing fits your business, sure, adopt it, but don't do it because we say adopt it. I mean, I've talked to groups and they'll be like, hey, we're thinking about buying this company. What do you think? I'm like, never ask a corporate person what they think, because I have an opinion and I trust myself, and I think I know your business, but I don't. I'm not living in it every day like you are. So don't ever ask me. Do what you think is right, because I will tell you what I think, and then you'll start doing it because you'll think I'm smart, and that's just a mess, So it's a different culture that we run, and so when we're buying companies, the best way for us is to either you do business with us, or you connect with us, or you find some connection to the company, and then roll up into the acquisition group.
It's just organically, naturally happening through the connections of people within your organization who are bringing you opportunities.
Yeah, and the culture remains the same. Small. We have the biggest small company in the world. Mm-hmm. I think, we act like a small company.
Yeah. Do you look for companies that are already heavily profitable? Is it more banking on the technology that they have?
No, usually we're liking small companies, and that's we've done large deals plenty of times. Mm-hmm. But what we can do for a small company is incredible. Mm-hmm. So we like small companies. Usually they're not making great money. Within a year they are. Just by, and this is kind of weird, but small companies often are not run by the best business people. They may have been good startup people, but they're not great business people. Or even if they've been running for a while, and bought by, like sometimes we'll buy a company that buys companies. And they may have well-educated people, but they weren't the top of their class. They're not the best. The people, they're not motivated. They're not driven. They're not, either they're entrepreneurial and they want to leave, which is okay because their season is over. And usually there are people underneath are good leaders. We don't send in people to take over. Or they're long-term companies that haven't been developed properly and they haven't been cared for or focused on just simple business attributes. And we can turn those in a year without the company feeling any different. It's just caring. When
Doesn't feel like a hostile takeover's happening.
Never. In fact, they feel they're waiting. Sometimes I'll do the secret shopper thing and just turn up at an acquisition and be talking to people, and they're like waiting for something to happen, someone to come in and tell them to change everything, and I'm like, that's not happening. No one's coming. You're going to have to reach out to us if you want to do something with us, but just keep being who you are.
Yeah. It's you're going to have to write the book or do the book on the way you guys are doing acquisitions. Such an impressive rate that it's, that it's working for you.
We've had people copy us. Like they'll oh, they bought that, I'll buy the competition of that. And so we have one company did that for a while. And then I met them, and they said, we really need to talk to you because all our companies are failing and yours are succeeding. What is happening? I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, we get our guys and we send them in. I'm like, end of story. You killed what you bought. You probably thought you were smart. You're not smart. They built that business, not you.
You suffocated the baby.
Yeah, you took out the heart. I mean, people leave at a high rate when they get bought. We don't have people leave. We have a lot of long-term employees, and the only frustration is they think we don't give them enough communication early, and we're like, yeah, we don't. Because they work it out. When they realize no one's coming, they just get on with working. And
just get focused and do it. Yeah, it's such an interesting way. It's almost like, and it speaks also too to like even just management. So many managers are so hawkish on their employees and have their fingers in every little thing versus letting people just kind of figure it out. And
it's one of our biggest problems is that people don't think in family terms. So most managers and leaders if you get promoted as a leader or manager, it means that somewhere in you have this kind of control thing and someone's recognized that you feel like you know the right way to go. And all people are making it up. So, you just have a pretty good hit rate on your guesses. But you get that opportunity. And if you haven't been taught properly and grown properly, you just tell people what to do and you want everyone to do what you think is right. And you lose. That's a losing game because people... You need to learn how to get people to follow you, not obey you. And most people want just to obey you. And if you want them to follow you, you need to let them follow. You don't make them follow, right? And so when you have natural leadership, like you've learned how to develop your leadership where you're not trying to control people anymore, but people are choosing to go the direction you're wanting to go, it's a totally different result. But most people don't get that. Most people elevate too fast, don't have the development help they need, and they don't realize the goal is not to grow the business ever. The growing the business is the result. That's not the goal. The goal is to grow people. If you grow people, the business will grow. But if you think your goal is to succeed as an individual, no one's following that. No one cares about you being successful. They only care about if you're interested in them being successful.
Guys, are you listening? David Reid dropping golden nuggets over here. I mean, it's very simple, but the most simple things are the most effective.
We don't do simple well because we think we're smart.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We overcomplicate a lot of it. Even in terms of thinking, hey, growth through acquisition or leadership or management. Two things before we wrap up here. On the renewable energy side of things, what is the strongest application that you're seeing right now in renewable energies, within the umbrella of companies or, kind of services that you've developed out over the years?
You mean in what way? In business or energy or what?
I would say in terms of business. What's the most applicable to the market right now? Like what's actually being actively applied?
Well, okay, so
either commercially or government
the now stuff everyone knows. It's unfortunately they've been squeezing the cost out of it, but wind and solar have been great. They're not great. We need better ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to make great money at that right now because governments are driving, businesses are not, and when we move to businesses driving, there will be more breakthrough and more ideas. But today governments are driving, and so
government will pay for wind and solar. Independent companies not as much.
No, the government is paying and driving, there's tons of government money. They want to have energy independence, and so wind and solar are good. They're just trying to get the cost out, which is great. But the natural business behavior hasn't been happening in that space. But volume has, and so volume's getting cost out. So today, wind is doesn't need government help. So that's good news. Is we've got it to a point where it's a decent energy supply option. But there's other things. There's more invention yet to come. I mean, we're playing in other spaces, and I think the hard thing as a business is to go after something that is being commoditized, and they've driven the commodity path, which means no innovation can even breathe other than getting bigger. So that's why we're going offshore. You got the bigger you build the wind turbine, the better. We have a technology now that actually, because transporting these things is a problem. So we worked out, well, what if we build them on site? And so we're actually building the tower on site. We have a new technology doing that.
Because most are made in China, right? And then shipped out here?
They did. The U.S. government's trying to build it back into the U.S. So they're doing a good job of turning it into new jobs here. So we have a plan that built workover rigs, and now it's building these systems to build towers in the field. But it's in the U.S. It's in Texas. So most of our construction is in the U.S. Most of our product and development has been in the U.S. So we're not like most industries working out of other countries. We found ways to do it. We actually had a plant next to Disneyland in Orange County that was cheaper than Poland and China just by working on process. So I'm a big believer that America. Now we have no unions there, so I mean we just pay people well, and they all act to that family thinking. They own the company and they deliver better. Whereas if we did that, probably with unions, we'd never have had that heart and connection and drive. And they would have just seen it as they're the bad people, and I'm going to try and get as much out of them as I can. But made sure we paid people well, and that meant there was no need for the unions to come in. And but that was pretty incredible because it's the most costly place in the world to be, and we were able to beat out low cost alternatives. And that
was an on-site development.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was our old headquarters for some of our machinery. But I mean, all of the big robots were built there, all the big top drives, and there's a lot of big machinery that got built in a very non-industrial place. It used to be, most of the oil field was in Southern California, and they moved out to Texas. But a lot of our brands started there. But they were the last one there, and they did some good work. But I think that's possible. Ingenuity is possible here, which is what I learned in integrated projects. And so, I mean, well, there's still some outsourcing going on, but it's amazing what you can do here. I think the innovation of the States is really good. But
can you do it quicker, faster, cheaper, in-house versus
big things we can. There's some things we're going to struggle with. We can't compete with Korea on big vessels. We're going to be twice the cost here. But that's pretty much welding and big steel. But now complex machinery we can do here. And we can do it well. So it's more of a focus. Well, the U.S. The government wants to push oil manufacturing jobs into renewable manufacturing jobs, and we're in the process of doing that. So yeah, it's very possible. We also do it in other countries. We can build in country for anybody. So we're just doing it for the U.S. How do we build in country? So all the governments are pushing for more. I want to see it built in my country. And so that's good. So we're ramping up more than anybody to do renewables, and a lot of it is moving because solar was all based out of China, and I think now they've got like incentives to drive for manufacture here in the U.S. So the government's doing a lot to try and change that picture, but there's policies coming out now that will encourage through tax measures people who are going to switch over jobs from oil and gas to renewables. So.
Right, which they go really hand in hand still. I mean, everything you do or need to develop renewables, oil and gas has to play a role in it. I think people don't make or understand the connection because they're out.
They go together, yeah. And if you think everyone who's drilled a well of any length in the world, and probably not everyone, almost everyone, yeah, probably have been built in the U.S., the drilling equipment. It was not. So if you're drilling in China, and you're using U.S.-built machines.
Yeah.
In Africa, you're using U.S. California-built machines. If you're drilling in Southeast Asia or Australia, they all shipped out of Orange, California. And that's something people don't understand is the oil and gas business has leaned heavily on the U.S. because it's a protectable place. Our ideas are protected here. and our technology is good, and we can do things that others can't do when it comes to complex machinery. So yeah, I think that'll play out into renewables as well. I think we'll see a lot of that.
Is it accurate? I've heard in places like even mining for solar energy, like the minerals and everything that goes into it, that causes almost, if not more damage than a traditional oil rig.
Yeah, you can argue both sides. There's none of them are doing all good. There's a dark side to everyone's story. That's the hard part. The problem is more, oil and gas isn't bad. In fact, you're going to see in what we're doing with oil and gas, we're becoming net neutral in a lot of what we're doing, and as we're learning to put carbon back where we got it from, so we're actually pumping it back into the earth. It's going to actually fix the problem. So as oil and gas gets where it needs to get from a neutral standpoint, that it's not impacting the world with carbon, we'll still see it live for a long time. It's going to have a good future. You can throw stones from one side to the other. It doesn't really matter. Oil and gas is here for a long time because it's low cost, high intensity energy. All of these other things will take a lot more real estate, do a lot more damage. But we're going to keep finding things, and hopefully there's other ideas out there beyond oil and gas and beyond some of the current renewable solutions. So I think it'll all change over time. I don't get too political about either or. I think thinking oil and gas is bad is a mistake. I think it's got us where we are. And when you get to travel the world and watch the world evolve, it's because of low cost energy that they're able to develop. It's what got us all the option of flying around the world, when previously that was only for the rich. Now everyone has access. That's oil and gas doing something for us. iPhones, all the plastics we have. We do have to manage them better, but these are things that have made our modern life possible. We have to be careful that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, 100%. Someone's going to come in and disrupt it all. It'll be very interesting to see, and hopefully benefit in a lot of ways. But before we wrap here, talk about RedM. What led you, speaking of traveling all over the world and everything, very important we touch on this. What led you to developing RedM, and anything you'd like to share on that?
Sure. RedM, I actually, it's a long story, so I won't tell the whole story, but got involved through my wife in doing something about human trafficking, and particularly sex trafficking. We got involved in an organization here that does the recovery. My wife was on the board. I was traveling all over the world. I got on the board. My wife decided to step off and give me that spot. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, these people do incredible work. It's very complex. It's for American women. So in Houston, we're seeing about 75% of the trafficked kids are American. And so there's some bad things happening, and we've got to do something about it. And so the recovery process works like it's like a cult combined with multiple rapes in the psychology of the woman. And so they get built into this ecosystem that they can't get out of. So it's like a cult type thinking where they believe that's their family. This is their boyfriend, even though there's 9 other girls that he sells. And it's amazing the things that can happen. So if you watch anything on cults, you'll learn that nobody goes into it because they thought it was a cult. They go into it because they thought these are nice people who care for me. And so the recovery process is very complex and very expensive. And although awareness is happening, the government is helping with trying to break down all these organizations. When they come out, there is a long journey ahead of them for recovery. And so I realized it was a scary subject. And so I started pulling together professionals to start doing pro bono work for them. And so we basically created RedM, and it allows people to sign up to do something about trafficking. But we do an assessment of your life to work out, okay, how much can you do? Like there's a single mother who just decided to be in a photo shoot we did because you can't show the actual woman. That's all she did. That's all she could do. That's awesome. Then we have other people who have like a marketing talent, and I'll just do my little bit. And so with these organizations, you start working with them, you get trapped, and years later you're like, oh my goodness, I'm trapped in and I feel guilty. I can't leave. And I was trying to help them, but now they're like encroached on my life and I'm exhausted. So we built it like projects. So people go and work for an organization for a determined period of time. They do have a determined amount of hours. They get that work done, they're out. And then we do an assessment. How you doing? You want
You
to
put out almost like a call for X
Yep.
particular project.
Yep. And so people will work on a project or multiple, depending on how they're doing. So we're trying to not burn people out, but we're trying to give them something to do something without getting too close to a very scary subject. So it's been very successful. We probably have about 400 people right now working on about 7 different organizations, just helping out. And sometimes it's tiny things that they do, and sometimes it's just one time and then they never do it again, and that's okay. We're just basically found a way to give professionals purpose in the middle of their life without having to divert. Because when you get close to the subject, most people have to stop their life and start fighting trafficking for the rest of their life. And that works really well for the traffickers, because then no one is wanting to be around the subject. They just want to protect kids or make sure if they see trafficking, they know the hotline number. But you want people to build it into their lifestyle, that they're doing something all the time about trafficking.
The person shouting on the street, although they may be correct, people tune them out quite a bit versus, what David's talking about here, which I think is genius. And any of you who are involved in a nonprofit or interested in starting a nonprofit or being involved somehow, it does feel like a very hefty step. I'm launching my own nonprofit. I'm in the process right now, and it's like, oh my God, there's so much to think about and go through, and getting people to come in and donate, get involved. But what you've done is broken it into micro steps for people to implement tiny actions that, if they don't have the financial means, everybody has their own skill set that they can apply.
And it's worth billions. So it's worth
100%
than your finances. And that's what I think. I was in New York and I saw a presentation by a company who was a charity, and they're incredible. They said, here's where we were and here's what this company did for $2 million. And I was like, we can do that for nothing. We can do that. That's not hard. The people I know, we can do that for nothing.
That's incredible.
We do it in our spare time. And I loved that. I was immediately, and I put my hand up. Nobody liked it because there was people trying to sell. There was the whole group there, like, we'd like you to be a part of our group. We're big companies in marketing who are giving back. And I'm like, yeah, but you're charging, right? We don't have to do that. We can do this in our spare time with just the very talented people, small amount of time.
Yep.
All of us doing it, we can make a difference.
Smallest efforts, tiniest thing, the smallest company acquisition can lead to the biggest impact. So I think it ties everything together really well. And, with that, David, I can't thank you enough, man. This has been incredible, insightful. I'm very excited to share with everybody. What is the best way for people to find you, follow you, and get into contact with you?
LinkedIn is simple. NOV is the company, David Reid. I'm on Twitter, but not really. So don't.
Does anybody use Twitter anymore?
I don't know. All those years, I have a cousin in renewables, and he used to write to me all the time on Twitter. And 6 months later, I'd be like, "Oh, there's a feature for writing to people." Didn't know. I don't use it, but
there's an inbox here. What the hell is this?
That's what happened, dude. Here's my email. He lives on Twitter. I'm like, oh man, not me. But LinkedIn. I'm a pretty heavy LinkedIn user. I don't know, there's stuff on our website at joinredm.com if you want to just sign up, but happy to interface with anybody who wants to give back. I may put you onto someone else, but I want people to do something. So
cool. I might have some companies for you. Speaking of which, guys, go check out joinredm.com. Make sure you go connect with David. David, again, thank you so much, brother. I really, really appreciate it sincerely. Stick around for one quick second while we wrap up here. Guys, make sure you share this. Please share this video, because we had lots of golden nuggets. I guarantee there's something everybody can obtain from listening to this interview. Make sure to check us out on all your favorite podcast apps. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes so others can find the show too. And we'll see you guys next time.